to welcome everyone to the Governance and Operations Committee meeting for Wednesday, April 3rd, 2024. Just so everyone knows, members of the public can be present in the council committee room during the meeting, and also the webinar will be recorded and published to the city YouTube site. Today we have, first on the agenda is the general government finance funding report, discussion, and I will hand that over to Mr. McCullough.
Thank you, Mayor Jones. As we know, we had GOC last Monday. We had a number of groups come in that had talked about economic development. We currently don't have a contract with LCIC. They have been providing, economic development work for not just the city of Trail, but the region as a whole for a number of years. And the last contract sort of had the city of Trail moving in its direction and the rest of the group. And I think we're working on the same things, but it was just sort of two different contracts. So that has come. And so we also had we had a presentation from Community Futures, who hasn't been someone that has come forward to the city for this type of economic development funding. And we also have the chamber involved. And I don't know when the chamber is. Sorry. So we had the chamber come as well. And that hasn't been something, again, they've been getting some funding, but it's been sort of a source that was in the budget and has, been changed a bit, but has been, as we'll see in a couple of the documents, kind of see the trend and kind of where we're at. But certainly their council, when you were early in your days, and you probably at the time were just more enjoying the fact that you were heading to an event, didn't realize that there was sort of a, hey, economic development, there was a chamber, I think, Community Futures and LCIC were all kind of there, and then talked a bit about council, and I think that sort of was the driver, especially last year with the budget being so late. We kind of stayed with the status quo. We'd already had a commitment with LCIC for what their work was doing, so there wasn't a case of, hey, are we ready to take it on things. But as we have percolated over conversations and budget, there was some conversations, hey, now that LCIC is up, is that something that council wants to continue with? Is there other proponents? Is there a plan for more economic development? Could we do, something with LCIC, but then also something with somebody else? And so that's what sort of spawned that conversation, to be able to bring those groups in. And so again, on those presentations, we were able to get some feedback. And I appreciated the opportunity for council and to talk with the groups themselves to sort of understand what it is exactly they were asking for. So I thought that was very helpful too, because in looking at it, I was able to, I think, try to piece some things together. There's also some questions from council, and I didn't really do a big in-depth report. Part of this is, hopefully you read the information. I can help out with kind of the budgets asked, how do we get there if we want to do additional funding? Those are sort of my rules, but I'm also sort of one that has to stay out of the way of directing. I mean, as much as I can answer questions or do the best that I can, and I feel that we've asked the groups, not only from their presentations, but from some of the responses that come back to us and that have been shared, that council would have a sense of what they're asking for, what are the drivers for increases, etc. And so this document, I think, will hopefully help a bit in doing that, and also I think give council an understanding of kind of what the numbers are looking at. What's the effect? Because I think that's always one of the challenges that council has to deal with. So I'm going to share my screen just so that you have a handout of what the document that I have, and but just for those that might be watching, whatnot. So one of the questions that came up from council just overall is, hey, what are the numbers? What kind of funding do we have? What's going on here in a lot of senses? Because we, did some different things. And so again, if I look at 2023, you'll see that when we had the budget in grant and aid, it says it quick. Am I still on Zoom? Am I still here? Yeah, okay, sorry, just got a weird message. So the budget was 87 for the grant and aid. We had the rec facilities. I don't know why I'm getting this. No, okay. We got the rec facilities, and again, then we had the economic development budget itself. Now, a few things here, one is, I'll see a bit of history there, I didn't know that there was a jump up from, what LCIC had in the contract, because that had been pretty consistent, so that's one kind of, you'll see that, a bit of a difference there. The rec facilities, there was some questions that we sort of used the funding together last year, because, hey, we've got a budget, and again, however you wanna slice it, it's sort of, it's a budgeted amount, so it's an expense component, so you see the budget of 87.5 for grant aid, and you see the 31,000 for the rec facilities, and you can see that if you were just looking at those two numbers there, we're about 12 grand over, but one of the things that sort of hit us was, and again, when we look through a bit of a list here, there were a number of, previous requests, so council had approved, the previous council had approved some, funding for a group, but they hadn't either completed or hadn't, had it forward, so we, sort of those historical ones kind of came up before even this council, was able to approve some of them. So again, not a huge, difference, but you can see that we were slightly over budget on what council provided to the different groups last year, and there's where the budget numbers are. And so when I look over at 2024, a couple things happened when I was in looking at sort of the account as I'm getting, deeper into the budget and going, this account actually hasn't had any activity in it for quite a while, and it's in sort of the same category. And so I decided that it would be probably best to match it with what I think the intention was, and that's why there's an increase of $10,000 in the grant and aid. You'll notice that the economic development has also gone up quite a bit. Part of that was a collapsing of some funding that had initially, I guess, over in the past, sort of sitting there for the chamber, but hadn't been allocated into this. And we're kind of using economic development. I figure this is all internal inside the budget. So when we look at where the budget numbers that I shared with you as a total, here's where our numbers are for grant and aid, rec facilities, and economic development. So hopefully that was one of the questions I think that council was wondering, like, what kind of numbers are we dealing with here right now? We'll quickly look just even on the grant and aid and just the 20,000 for economic development. Council had agreed a couple of meetings ago to provide that sort of prepayment to LCIC in the 20,000. That's why that amount is there. The grant and aid above the 17. And if I go to the next page here. Kind of, again, here's sort of what we're looking at for 2024, says 2023 of it. This is actually 2024 with the cash grants. We've got 17. Some of the current requests that are becoming is that we've got sort of a Pasco that's looking at about 2,000 there, United Ways looking at 1,000, Hospice Society is looking for 5. We also know that CDS is looking, I think, between 22 and 25,000, much like they did last year for the concession, because I still know that we were chasing down one person that was interested, but we hadn't had a lot of success with that. So those numbers there are sort of, here's what's happening for 2024. That we've in so far, and that may be coming at you, so part of it is just kind of understanding where you're at. So say hypothetically, right now at 24,000 and another 30 there, you'd be looking at 54 of a possible 128, potentially, depending on what council does, would be used up in the grant and aid and rental waivers budgets. Okay. And to kind of be clear where that 17,000 came from, the council had approved the FT20, the scholarships, we moved them up quite a bit, so now up to grand we're providing it, and then we just in the last meeting, the 25th, we have the Trail Community Action Team anti-stigma, the $14,000 sitting there, and so that's sort of what we're thinking of that 17 current ask, with some of the other numbers being coming to you soon within the next meeting or so of some of those other ones. So just, the reason I bring this up is because I think there was a question of, if we've got grant aid, do we use some of the grant aid, that number and put it into economic development? I mean, sometimes it's just a question, you've got kind of a pool there. That could be one of the things that you do, as far as trying to figure out how you're gonna, deal with requests. And then just from last year, this is one to kind of, as they come along, I know that we ended up with a bulk of them staying more to the end of the year last year. We have all these kind of one again from you look at the top, you can see we had instant scholarships again. That's an ongoing one. A big component there was CDS, gyro concession 1, 2, and 3. You'll see the wild safe, that was one that was from, again, something that was approved from the previous council that then got paid in 2023, even though it was sort of a 2022 grant and aid component, and that's the same with the Tadnac Tennis Club. So, and again, actually the same thing with the Selkirk College outreach program as well. So when I look at that, those numbers itself basically would be, to me, kind of covered or wider over almost, like they were things that didn't actually have any decision by this council, but by the previous council. We don't have any of that this year, so we kind of, everything's tucked nicely inside here. We don't have any outstanding amounts, correct, Mr. Jean, great? We don't know anybody anything?
Yeah, might have to double check on the well safe contract.
Okay.
Whether
There's
we
a
are,
longer commitment maybe for them?
yeah, it was definitely multi-year. I just
Okay.
can't remember, and we could be at the end, but I'm not 100%
Okay,
sure right now.
we'll keep that in mind, thank you. And then, so even here, you can see that last year we had paid the 12,000, even though it was approved in January, we kind of pushed it into 2023, because that's where the funding came from, and that's where it's for the chamber, so again, we kind of, been using the pots in different ways sometimes. And so here, sort of where, looking through the numbers and also trying to give a bit of history, if I can, for the different asks or the groups themselves, and sort of that historical component of fundings. So Community Futures, from what I can tell, I mean, I realized they did come to ask for some seed money to go and get another grant through the grant need last year. The one that, this kind of economic development ask is new, and we had asked them to come, and you'll notice that it's at 17,000. I think that, I'm assuming that the council had looked at the listing of what activities they were doing. They also had made it clear that they would lower the amount if there was ready grant money, and that's why if you're looking at 17,000 versus the 19 is because they said, hey, we get this money from council through ready grants, this is what our ask would be. And so one of the things that I think, and I've heard council ask these things, and I think that it's very valuable questions, whether or not that comes to ready grants, whether it comes to those grant and aids that come here, is that question of, if you're doing something regionally, yeah, we love trail running, we know that we're a hub, but we also kind of want to know, if you're doing something regionally, how's it gone with asking our partners in the area? How's it gone with our local municipalities that we're working well with? So again, some of those questions, I did appreciate that, what Community Futures came forward with was, here's sort of our ask overall, but here's the portion that we come to from trail for, and we recognize that if we're gonna do some of these things, because we're regional, that in their sheet, their breakdown is such that they were also going to be asking for funding from other sources as well, which I think is a key component. LCIC, you can see that where it was at for a number of years, and it's had a bit of an increase. You'll see that the current year's ask is about, we're all 3 years, so I only have up to 2024 here, but their ask has gone from 90 to 100. That's about the difference is 11.6%, but that carries on for the next 2 years. And this is only the portion that is for the city of Trail. So you have to understand they also get funding from the RDKB. And again, to be clear, that's just from the other 6. So it's not a case of us also paying through RDKB, which is a very good question to ask. Are we funding this through our service and then also funding it from the city? Because that sometimes comes to the city that way. We actually sometimes do get hit twice. And people don't understand that. But it's that good question to ask. Hey, if this is coming out of a service where we're already funding through the city of Trail, and then you're coming to the city of Trail, now you're getting a portion of both pots. So very good questions to be asking. But they were very clear. They shared what they want to do for LCIC. Definitely, it is that seed type of work that goes on, and much like a seed, it doesn't always sprout up and all of a sudden turn into a tree producing fruit automatically. It is something that grows and works on, and it is more regional based. They are talking about 11.6% increase, and now again, this would be to both pots. When I say that, meaning if you saw theirs, it did kind of break down what portion was for the city of Trail, what portion is being funded through 6 at the RDKB. That's an 11.6% increase, which here is about 11 to 12,000 each year. But, and so their proposal on their 3-year contract, if council was to look at it 3 year, you may just say, no, we may just run this for a year, see how things go. I think these are all options, I think, that are available to the city. Is that the 35% over 3 years, which is the increase that they are asking for, is to allow for them to pay competitive wages to their employees. So that was one of the key, that's basically the main driver of why the amount has gone up. Again, they did present on the different projects that they're working on, and hopefully council was comfortable or got some of the answers. I think that they are understanding a bit more on the desire from the funders of getting a bit more metrics on, so how are we successful when some, we come and present, and we know that it's not always gonna be that way, but just sort of that mentality of, yes, we had this new business come in, that may be this, or we've got leads on that, and it could turn into that, and just sort of putting some more metrics to their reporting. So I think that they've heard that, and I certainly see that in part of their presentation as well. Then the final one is the chamber. And in some of their documents, you can see, I went back, like I said, I'm trying to do the 4 years and then kind of what 2024's ask is. And that they had 10 in 2020, they had 12 in 2021. The 2022s and 2023s, because of where, council will remember that they had a really hard time getting their financials up to speed. And that's where council was only willing last year to give them the 12 for 2023s. They did not give them anything for 2022. They are moving towards getting their house in order. They've got their financial statements for 2022 done. Their key for them is that they want to have their financial statements. They're not done yet, but they are having, expectation is that they will have them for their AGM in May. So I believe that that is one of the criteria that they're supposed to have for kind of ongoing in that. Councilor Benson.
And forgive me if I'm remembering this incorrectly, but the number of directors on the board also wasn't at the minimum. Will that be?
Well, I know that they're working on it.
Okay.
They're trying to gain support. There's the one fellow there from either, I think it's Bill or Montrose, I can't remember right now.
Councilor Whitman?
Yeah.
Bill Whitman?
Yes, so he's again trying to
Yeah.
help them on getting that board into a healthy place. So there's work being done there.
Is there any issues with that, like on our end, if we provide?
Well, I think that there's a lot of things that are going on and especially small business and on the recovery side, especially through COVID.
Yeah.
And whatnot, and I think that as far as how they're operating and what they're doing or where the attraction is, I don't know if it's hard to get the small business inside that, just due to just trying to keep the lights on, or where they're trying to get how they're doing on their recruitment. I can't speak to that.
Okay.
Obviously, we wanna, we've had a chamber here for quite a while. It's something that, it's important for small businesses and that sort of thing. And yet you also understand that many communities, deal with that is sort of by the business itself.
Right.
So, interesting that where this is coming from, when you look at the numbers, like some places do things differently. Like I know in the valley, sometimes they say, can we get a portion of the business license piece? That's what, that's some of the asks come up. I know that, for example, in the city of Nelson, there's sort of a partnership that goes on with, economic development, that they've got Community Futures and the chamber together. And there's some funding that they share, and they also share some staffing. So that's again,
Okay.
sort of that
Yeah.
model that, and this is where I think,
Yeah.
that I also heard, and I believe that there's a desire from this group, but sometimes it's hard when you're also trying to do your own operations.
For
But
sure.
how do you come together and be more, like, how many people do you need to do these roles if you're all sort of duplicating what you're doing? And I think that they heard from council, there's a desire here to help out or to be part of this, but they're also, I think, a concern of, are we just paying people for a min for 3 different places, where if you guys were to work on something together, could that happen? That's not gonna happen today, but that's where maybe, again, as we look through these conversations, is more as we get better at this, talking to them in September, October, saying,
Right.
what's your plan for 2025? As we work together with this, how, what does that look like? What are you guys doing together? I think that would certainly be where, a council, I think spoke to that at their presentation when they were here, asking their questions, and I think they were like, yeah, how do we work together? And there was even you can even see them having almost a little cross collaboration when they were talking together, and so I think council really encouraging that will be something I think that you're gonna wanna talk about.
Thanks, Colin.
And again, on the chamber side, just noticing on their numbers that, they did get the funding requested for Bluebell. Certainly the request for Roslyn is quite a bit short than what they're asking for. There doesn't seem anyway historically to have been any additional funding coming from some of these other areas. And again, I don't know that for sure. I'm just looking over some of the numbers that they've had. So again, we know that majority of businesses are here in Trail, and we understand that. So that's one of the questions that council has to sort of, to look at. We're trying to work with our partners, and I think that we're doing a good job. There's been lots of good conversations, but it is also when you're looking at the numbers, what is the city of Trail being asked for, and where the others come to the table on what is a regional sort of entity. And again, one of the noting on some of the increases was that also paying competitive wages is a cost pressure to the chamber based on some of the information that they funded. So when I look at, here's what the asks are. You've got Community Futures at the 17, LCIC, at least in the current years, and for 166. So again, 11.6% increase over last year. And the chamber, it's a bigger jump than, that 12 to 34. And right now, just the economic development budget is at 109. So again, and just remembering, so if you were to take some funding that's out of either the other two pots that we've got there, and it doesn't mean we can't say, hey, go find me some more money somewhere else, like, cut back on something else in the city. That those are all things that staff can be directed to do. You're looking at, if you take from there, what is that number? Does council interested in covering all of the asks that are there? Are they interested in a 1-year contract with LCIC? Where are you at with sort of the chamber ask? And so these are, hopefully that's giving you some information, and I think more of that neat numbers that I think that you were looking for. And if I'm missing something, I would certainly do my best to try to answer as best I can.
I'll jump in. Thank you for just breaking that down, where we're at, where the pots are, being able to compare to where we've been, to where we are. And of course, moving parts, everybody wants a raise. Everything's gone up, cost of living's gone up, everybody wants more money, and I think we get that. But people want more money, they have to have places to get the money from, right? So it's reflective of what money we have coming in has to go with, or where are we shorting other things to provide this? Being involved and attending some of these meetings and these different events and understanding a bit of this economic development. I think there's an importance of all of them in a certain percentage of what they're doing for our community. I think very much that the chamber is really great for supporting our small, and local businesses. Those are, essentially, those are a lot of our taxpayers, our small businesses here. And the people that pay our property taxes, not own business and all of that as well. So I think, making sure that we do support the chamber in some way, shape or form is very important. And the LCIC, growing those seeds and looking at those bigger industries as there's opportunity for expansion, doing a land inventory, working on some, studies, some of the stuff that we don't have capacity particularly to do, I think is important as well. But looking at, the LCIC has a brand new board. They are going to be having, or I guess it's now the LCCDTS officially, they are going to be having a new strategic plan. What does that strategic plan look like? And how does that align with what we value as a city and what the things we want to do? So personally, at this time, I don't think I would be comfortable agreeing to a 3-year contract with them until I see what they are planning on doing and what their focus is, and on how they're going to engage us for our feedback, spending the money that we're contributing. Are we seeing what results are we seeing out of it? Do we have access to that land inventory on our city webpage? Do we have access? Because I think it's really clunky if someone's coming here and they want to do business here. How do you find them? Hey, we wanna invest and do something in Trail, you go to Trail's website and then we ship them off somewhere else. Right, other than having a meeting with someone physically here, but our website, I mean, there's money that we could be spending working on economic development, accessibility for people just looking at coming and investing in Trail. At a city level. So I mean, I think giving them funding is important, but I think we could use some of those funds differently for the city as a whole with an agreement to provide measurables to us and track data so that we actually have information. Because if we go down to a meeting at UBCM and they say, great, your businesses are growing, how many businesses have come to Trail in the last, and companies and whatnot? We need to have that information to provide them. And if we don't have it, we don't track it, how do we know? So I think I would like to see, proportionately it broken down and definitely not a 3-year contract at this time until we actually see what the direction and the strategic plan for the LCCDTS is and how they want to involve the city in having input to that.
Anybody else?
Thank you, Councillor Hanson. I have to agree with pretty much everything that you said. You touched on it earlier as well, CEO McClure, about measurables, about having quantitative data. I think that's super important. I like reports that are really clear, like what have you given us and what you plan to do, and just keeping it simple. I think for a lot of us is really important, and I can be honest that I did get kind of lost in the weeds and some of the navigating the request from the LCIC, which was a part of the, and may still be, the LCCDTS, so. And then we got Metal Tech Alley in there, which looking at that, that's a separate entity. It's, they're calling it a project. So there's a lot of stuff, a lot of moving parts. But I did like their last presentation. I liked some of the stuff that they were talking about that Councillor Hanson already alluded to. And I kind of had that in the back of my mind coming in here, that I was somewhat reluctant maybe going with the whole 3-year plan as well. So I like a 1-year commitment. I support the chamber. I think our downtown businesses have taken a beating in the last 3 years, and anything we can do to support them, I think we need to. I like, that we're working with the chamber. We're encouraging them to get their finances in order. They are a strong community partner. So I support where they're going. And Community Futures, again, I think we need to come up with our share as well. I mean, they're asking 40%, with the Ready Grant, applied, they're looking for $17,268. And I like everything that they presented in their presentation. I think they're, again, a proven, asset to the community. They have a proven track record of successes, and I would like to support them as well in that ask. So, that's kind of where I'm at with the 3 different proposals. Thank you, Mayor Jones.
Thank you, Councillor National. Anyone else? Councillor Benson.
Just a couple comments, nothing major, but I guess when it comes to the LCIC, I hear a lot of requests for measurables and metrics, but what have we asked them for in the past? It's, if we're not clear on what we want, then it's hard to be upset when we're not getting it. So if maybe we can design or develop, here's the report we'd like to receive. I know we get their quarterly reports, but if there's information that's not in there that we see value in, can we add that in? And then just the comment, Councillor Hanson, about the raises. I don't think it was there. It was to bring them to competitive, which is super important.
I agree. Raises are definitely something reflective of what things are costing now, like everywhere else.
And then and forgive me if I'm wrong, because I get confused with the LCIC, LCCDTS, but as the reps, you sit on there? And Councillor Butler does, would we have a voice in the strategic plan as the main funder, or is one of the main funders? Is that?
It's an interesting question, because as far as I know, you see we're dealing with LCIC, which
Right.
is sort of,
I'm sorry.
No, it is, and this is where I think everyone's kind of going, this is where it's coming together as a.
Okay.
Right, so that's one of the things that they talk about in there's reference, there would always be sort of city representation.
Yeah,
And instead of sort of like, well, I'm not here and the LCs are here, it's like, you know, like you would be having somebody now, like you said, as part of, representing the city.
Right.
On the board.
okay, so then they would be a part of that strat plan.
Yes.
To ensure that
and I
our-
think that's part of what,
That's what we're waiting
Yeah.
to find out.
Yeah.
Because they, with having the previous board and the two different boards, now they're amalgamating.
Into, yeah,
Now, what does that structure look
Yeah.
like? Right, and there is not a definitive clarity on exactly how that
Yeah.
structure is broken down yet.
gotcha.
So that was my apprehension with going ahead with a long-term
Yeah.
commitment until we knew exactly, you know, Counselor Butler or myself or whatever municipal reps have a vote.
Yeah.
As to what happens, as opposed to, you know, just a representation on a board and not actually being a voting member of that board.
Yeah.
Right, certain boards we're on, we're not voting members
Right.
of, right? We're just there for communications, but if it's spending
Yeah.
the money in our community,
Yeah.
we should have a say.
Yeah.
With whether or not something gets spent that way.
Yeah. I like that. So then, yes, I do agree with your, about the, maybe not a 3-year, but just enough to get through the strat plan in, a year or two to, instead of a 3-year. I'm comfortable with that and agree with the chamber. We need to support, them because our downtown local businesses and all small businesses have really been affected and we hear it all the time. So, I really appreciate you putting the effort into this document. So thank you very much.
Well, I know it was really simple, I apologize.
I think that whatever way we go, if we could get a quarterly report from each of them with metrics that that help us understand, it also helps when it's, the contracts come up and we're all like, just study economic development again if we're on top of it all the time, that we can.
And again, just as we're moving things into a better schedule for budget anyway, so things are becoming smoother as we get
Look
through
at us
things.
go.
Yeah, and I think that would be part of it as well, is trying to, it's a fair question, right? If we're not, kind of defining on what it is we wanna see some information on, then sort of, you know, they kind of like, here's what we've done.
Yeah.
It's not answering the question that we're looking for. I mean, we need to ask a better question, or ask a more defining
Yeah.
question.
I think of like Tia's question to them a few meetings ago, a few presentations ago, is how many jobs has this created? And then that presentation didn't have it, but Community Futures gave us a report that talked about how many new jobs were created based on like, so if there's pieces that some groups are doing that, we'd like to see from all groups, and if we could maybe share that and.
Well, and I think overall, what I also heard from council, and I would be directing back to each group, is we want to see some collaboration. We want to see how you guys come together.
That would be my comment, is there any sort of synergies that you could look at or ask them to look at?
Oh, yeah, that would be dynamite, because they work
Yeah.
really well together when they are.
I agree, yeah.
And I think a lot of them do work together in different facets, but separately.
Mhm.
And it would be, you know, I guess in a perfect world, it would be one house for economic development with combined staff and,
Yeah.
you know, working together in a communal space
Mhm.
that they all have access to and can support each other. And okay, that is not something that Counselor Martin's, you know, wheelhouse, that's actually bigger than what we handle. We're gonna pass this off to the LCIC. I mean, they may do that now, but sometimes it's easier to do it in-house than
Absolutely.
trying to fish it out. And then 2 weeks later, you don't get an email from someone because they didn't check it or whatever, right? It's easier to follow up that way.
Okay, well, I just wanted to say I agree with most what the council has said. I really appreciate all 3 of these organizations. I mean, Community Futures, the work that they do for our community is great. Like, they're almost the first contact for people coming in with new businesses, you know, for loans and training. The LCIC, you know, if we go to a year, I know for their contract, it's hard for a business to work on a 1-year contract without a 3-year plan. It's difficult, but how can we expect them to do their strategic plan? Well, we haven't done ours yet. And that's what we want them to follow, is our plan. So if we do them for a year and we get our strategic plan done, then they have something to follow and work towards, and that maybe they start getting deliverables on that, right? I mean, the chamber, I, support the chamber like everybody else has said, they do good work for small businesses. It's so difficult for small businesses in any community right now. I think the support that the chamber gives them is really, really good. I also agree, and I've said this for a while, that they do all this good work separately in their own little silos. And if they, if we could get them together, working together, as one group, and I don't even know what you would call it or what it would look like or how we would start that. I just see it so much more beneficial for our community because it's all under one roof. And, say a business owner needs to find out information, they go into the Community Futures building and everything is right there, whether it's a small business or large business and let's face it, getting back to the chamber, it's the small businesses that drive our community. They keep it going. They're the ones that are doing the economic development. It's difficult to get large industries into any communities nowadays because, if you're not something like tech already, you're not going into a small community to build a large business. I just don't see it. Well, let's just say it's difficult. So I would like to, and I don't know how we would do this, honestly, but I would like to see the Community Futures, the LCIC and the chamber come together, form a committee. We're willing to work with them. We want to see them bring something forward. We want a solid economic development basis for our community. That's what we need to keep things going and to improve our downtown and, all of the stuff that we're talking about constantly. So, I don't know what that looks like. I guess I'm having trouble trying to say what that would look like, but I think we're all on the same page with that. So, I don't know if council okay.
No, we keep going.
Okay, anyway, that's what I wanted to say. I think they're all great organizations. The people that are, on the boards and the volunteers are doing amazing work for our community right now. I just think it needs to look different. Go ahead.
I'm just
Councilor Martin.
gonna add to what you're talking about, Mayor Jones, prior to our term on council. Some of us haven't been here very long. Has it ever happened? Has that ever been broached before? Have they ever talked about? I can't look at you either, sorry, you just started. Seems like you.
Not to my knowledge.
Oh,
No, it wasn't in our
Yeah.
term. I don't believe it was.
I like your idea of the bringing them together just for some
Well, yeah,
general
let's just have a
conversation.
conversation.
Yeah.
And see what it looks like.
Well, it was interesting, Mr. McClure brought it up, because they were doing some collaborating at the end of our table at the committee meeting, which was kind of neat to see. And I also want to say for the record, I think a pay increase to bring competitive wages up to salary, that sits with my belief that it's important.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. I'm not trying to speak for all the council here, but I think we want to work with these groups and I think we want to do better and make it better for them, right? Sorry, Councilor Hanson.
I just wanted to just wrap my head around and Colin, you may know this better than me. So in 2022, the LCIC was funded 83,000 and that was part of a 3-year fixed contract.
Well, a contract as far as,
It was.
that it was 3 years, but I didn't know that it was escalator, I guess is the part that I would say
Okay.
that I,
And then jumped up to 92.
yeah.
Now they're asking for 100,006. So that's a 17, almost $18,000 increase in 2 years.
Yes, and like I said, the increase going on where LCIC is at it'll be a 35% increase.
In
gonna go up
three-
every
in
year,
3
right?
years.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and what would an average wage increase be?
Well, right
Like on a
now,
contract, like let's say we're union or you're like, you would be
Yeah,
like a
it would
3 to 4%
yeah,
kind of per year
That would be in that
per
line.
employee.
Yeah, in those ranges, yeah.
Okay, and so do we exactly, and there's only what, 2 employees for LCIC plus staff? 3?
And then some admin stuff.
2 directors and an administrator.
Yeah, so 3 of them. So would that, now of course my math is not off the top of my head here, but would that resonate, a 35% increase? Would that resonate to a 3 to 4% increase?
Well, one of
Per-
the things they had noted is that there's been no change
Yeah.
since twenty
They
twenty-one,
would
so
do some
sometimes
benchmarking.
when you're looking at. If you haven't had anything and now you're in 2024, so you've had let's say 3 years at 0.
Mhm.
And so if you were saying you're at 4,
Mhm.
and so if you, 2024 and you've got 3, so now you got 6 years, so 6 times 4, so just.
24%.
24.
Yeah.
So, again, that's, 24 versus 35, I mean, that's one of those questions that, and again, too, I think like any place, they were trying to hold things where things were at, with COVID and sort of being locked into a contract as well.
Mhm.
So.
Just in terms of equity too, right? They would do some benchmarking with similar positions throughout it to ensure that they're in alignment, and we don't know the ins and outs. Maybe they weren't, and this will bring them to a fair wage for their work. So.
Council Martin, you put your hand up.
And Councilor Hanson's talking about the increase due to wages and whatnot with the 2 people, but with the LCIC, and I wrote this down, LCC, VTS, amalgamating or boards joining. Will there be is there, not an opportunity, that's not the right word, for changes will that decrease a bit with
Well,
a little bit?
And again, they did talk about that, but the savings overall is about 10 grand in their.
10 grand, is that better than?
No, I hear you, and again, of
Yeah.
course, this is where, you can see maybe to their annoyance, where I was asking them, hey, we talk about time and different things, but, what happens if you have one single contractor, they're sort of like, hey, there's a burden here, and there was no, they noted there, they said that they felt there was no savings. So again, those were some of the questions that I had, like, if you had this joined together and you have a contract, can you, still give maybe, the increase you're wanting, but maybe because your costs are less, for the admin time or for, just the general portion of being more. I guess maybe they do 2 audits, now they maybe look to do one of those sorts of things, which I think are coming, as they go through.
What really resonated with me was when Mr. Dino Durazio commented on the efficiency factor. I was gonna make it more lean and more efficient, so that really kind of hit home with me.
So I'm just hearing a couple things here, one about like the funding and then 2 about how we could maybe work better. Is that something that we can put some action plan together at this meeting to, if there is like a bit of a committee struck to get an update, and then maybe as part of that, you can develop what numbers we want to see as a council from our economic development partners.
What is always possible, I just think, we're going to have to sit on a committee, I don't know where that kind of goes or what.
Yeah.
It's just, some feedback from council on what you want to see, that might be just part of the funding opportunity, saying, hey, we want to see some metrics, and if there's, some of them are already there, I don't know if you've got any advice, Gia, Butler?
Yeah, thank you through the chair. I think with any of these things, there's a funding agreement that goes along with it, right?
Mhm.
So we don't just give them a check, there needs to be something in writing
Yeah.
that says, we're giving you this money and this is what our expectations are. So I think, part of it, we could tonight, pass, 3 resolutions, to draft, funding agreements for your consideration. And then we can put those specifics into each one of those funding agreements, and there's nothing stopping us saying that, council has an expectation that the 3 groups meet and find some synergies with their delivery.
I like that.
Yeah.
And is there a way to be able to, as you said, funding, so on your quarterly reports, maybe that agreement doesn't get that bonus increase unless some of those targets are met. That
It
increase
depends if
in,
you're doing a 1 year or.
Right,
a 3-year.
yeah, I'm just thinking like, or, okay, here's your monthly reports, what have you done? You gotta show us some data or quarterly reports. And then that initializes your target for your next amount of funding. Right? Not like, here's the check for the year. You can report for me 3 times that you've done the same thing for the next 3
Yeah.
quarters.
Yeah.
And just saying you're doing a thing, but until we actually see the data, how do we know you're actually doing the thing?
Okay.
Right?
And
And
if
if,
we can put that as conditions of funding, right? And we can do a 1-year agreement with a renewal clause. you know, there's nothing stopping us doing that.
But I mean, I think the importance of doing a one-year agreement is that we want them to get together and see if they can come back to us with, you know, some solid ideas of how it's going to look moving forward. Because we want to work together with them. We all want to be a part of it. So giving them a bonus if they come back with a deliverable, well, we don't know what that's going to look like until we actually get our strategic plan done. So they've got something to work towards.
But would they not get their direction from their board for their strategic plan as opposed to us particularly?
Well, usually they like to line it up with what the cities looks like.
And again, where we're at right now, I'm thinking that these are some good suggestions. Hopefully we can, again, work with the group. You know, it won't be very long and we'll be back having this discussion earlier sort of thing. And then part of the results, I think we'll be able to speak to the group of, you know, hey, we're only 6 months away, probably likely, for wanting to know where you're at, especially if you're wanting to have some things set up for a January 1, or how exactly we're gonna keep things going. So, and I think I said, I believe that they had approached, or my understanding was that they had felt that they had approached council. You guys were very new in your seats, sort of thing, and like I said, not thinking that, hey, here's how we want to collaborate, or here's how we do it. And I think it also allows us to also look through, and, you know, what are the models? Like I said, not that everyone, you know, Nelson has the best model, but they're saying that they were successful with the chamber and Community Futures coming together. And so that's sort of where there's a committee there that's sort of a subcommittee that has the representatives from the different entities plus the cities there. And then there's also a larger group which has a very good tap into a number of businesses that are in the community as well. And then they kind of work together on where's the business retention and those sorts of things. And there may be other models, and that's something to talk with them.
When do we usually fund, is it, because remember there was like the 20,000 we gave?
Yes.
Is it usually a January 1 thing?
It has been.
Okay.
So, one of the things that, the RDKB did, and I'm not sure exactly how theirs would work, but they kind of continued for that first quarter, because they wanted to change the funding model to be sort of a 3-year starting April 1st. With reasoning behind it is a lot of times, at least for the regional district, they have to have their budget done by the end of March. So if you're getting a renewal, sometimes it's hard to say, well, are we gonna do this? It's November, December, when you haven't kind of done the budget side. So that's sort of where, and I understand where that's at. I don't necessarily know that we have to fulfill that this year. I think that there's a bit of a show me. I think there's a bit of what we're hearing from council is how did it go? How is LCIC come together now? Well, you know, where are you at with your efficiencies and how do we weave in some of the requests that we have? And again, I think they were pretty clear. If we're gonna try to go off mark with what their plans are, then they would want, you know, a different funding or want different money. And they kind of said, here's what we're doing with this kind of component. So that would be interesting to find out what is a good metric that goes out of what they're planning to do this year. So I would suggest that it's a bit different, not that we don't wanna, we would be working with the RDKB, but to me, it would sound like they're wanting to go on a 3-year, us doing the 1 year doesn't mean, it means we're still kind of partnering with them, but we're not quite tied in with the RDKB full 3-year contract.
Right.
But I mean, at least if we were going on what they're funding, we would be involved kind of for year 1, if that makes any sense.
Okay.
Mhm.
May I ask Terry a question? Director Martin, was there any discussion similarly to like what we've been having about the new board for LCIC in terms of RDKB funding?
There's just some concern is what we're bringing up about any efficiencies that are gonna happen.
Okay,
So,
nothing in terms of like the strategic direction changing or,
I brought up the one regarding, Councilor Hanson mentioned it months ago about
Yeah.
the job numbers.
Yeah.
That was internally at the regional district, so that was what we brought to them as well, just to show some
Okay.
information for us.
And I think that they heard, because when they did present to you, they kind of, I think,
Mhm.
you know, we're hearing like, hey, we're hearing that there's some other reporting, they wanna show, we haven't been, hasn't been our focus, but it sounds like from our funders, they wanna hear a bit more of, where you can, what has been successful, and sometimes it's a case of we haven't been successful, that's okay, that we just need to know that, right? It's, and if you're like, yes, I can say that, yes, we had some of this activity and we've seen a few businesses pop up and it's equaling this, that's good as well, but it also might be, yeah, had 3 months and yeah, we're working on things, but we didn't get any, didn't have success, doesn't mean that they weren't success, it won't be successful, but again, it's, I think they're getting the sense of, that what's happening and a bit more meat to that side of things, which I don't think that they're doing. And they're hearing it not only from the city, but they're also hearing it from their KP.
Counselor Henson.
Does the $100,663 ask from the LCIC incorporate the $10,000 in savings in the budget,
That was my.
in the staffing?
Yes.
Okay.
And again, that was where I was, again, trying to see where, you know, kind of shake the tree a bit and see if there was any way of coming together. And it was very clear in the response that, you know, it's being
So that's
taken care of.
adding into that.
It's been incorporated that savings. And again, they are still in the middle of, so part of those savings might not even say, would you only get 3 months of that savings as they try to wrap things up? And that's a great question.
So I don't know, I guess we should go to the funding amounts of,
That's certainly an option.
if everybody, is there any other questions or comments or before we?
And the question for me, and again, or just when I look at this, it's not a big ask, I don't know if council's not saying, hey, you know, do we take some of the additional funding that was in the grant aid and put a bit of that over into this to help lessen that blow? Or if it's like, no, we wanna keep the higher level of the in our grant aid, we want to help our community. And again, you know, happy to talk to some of our own budgets and see where we can find the savings. There's also some other places I'm sure that is a non-insurmountable number, if we look at the larger picture. So that's just some work that needs to be done, that we can figure out. And at the end of the day, if I'm saying, hey, we use 10 or 20,000 out of surplus, I'm pretty confident, much like last year, you trusted me that we were gonna use about 98, and in fact, we had a much higher surplus, but those are not items that we should be stopping council from moving forward with what
Thank
they
you.
want to do.
So it's a manageable amount, the $43,069.
It is a manageable amount, like I said, it did increase the grant aid over the previous year. That could be one that you might direct part of that or not. The only reason why I'm saying that too is because we did pay sort of the chamber out of that last year. So again, that's one thing to question. And this year we don't have, as far as Ms. Lucchini produced, we don't have the kind of previous year asks that kind of ate up some of your budget this year. So if you didn't have that, I think. So that's one of the things you can consider.
Through the chair, I get the feeling there's motions about to happen. I just have a couple of suggestions that, you know, we're either going to direct staff, to draft, funding agreements in certain amounts for each organization. And whether you want those to come back to council, or if you just want staff to draft them and enter into, so that's just a consideration when you're putting.
As far as timing for them too.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
if you want them to come back to council, of course, it's gonna take more time, so.
Okay, with leaving the staff personally.
And we will make sure that those things that we've talked about
So
today about reporting and.
If we decide on the numbers tonight, then you just put it into the motion and.
Yes, like we could do that, council enter into a 2024 one-year funding agreement with whichever, by providing financial support of. Or that, I actually put the council direct staff to enter into a 2020.
Can I ask one question?
Yeah.
Sorry. Do we know why, the funding requests from other, communities was lesser? Do we know if they had any, in their council meetings, if there was any conversation about why they weren't
No,
prepared to fund them
Chamber?
completely? Yeah.
Tribal chamber?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
Good
Like I
question.
said, I know that, you know, even for someone like Fruitvale to give what they were giving, it's on the size of their budget and their taxation, it's actually quite a bit of money, so again, to whether or not, the other entities were thinking that there isn't value, I don't know where that request sort of landed. Jim Butler, you've got maybe.
Just from my history, I would say also that with Rossland, they fund their, tourism.
Right.
Tourism also.
Yeah, tourism Rossland, so I think there's always a bit of a competition there between chamber and tourism, yeah.
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 That's a really good
And
question too.
if I heard it right, I don't think LCIC gets funding from other municipalities. Did I understand?
Well, they do
You got
because
RDKB?
through that, so the others, so we kind of, Councilor, we kind of talked about the east side seven, so.
Is that what you meant by that, the other six?
Yeah, so the other six are part of the RDKB funding, so they see that they're in that there, and then you've got that sharing ratio that is based on sort of the assessed values that kind of get used for this kind of formula.
And where that industrial area is, correct me if I'm wrong, that is area A. So any of that Middleton Alley that's been promoting in that area of industrial, those taxations all go to area A. Any of those new buildings or new construction or anything out there goes to area A.
Right, but again, when we think about regionally, it's again, if you got there, but there's not a lot of homes out there, again, it could be improved, obviously, but maybe you're living in trail, so that's that whole. Again, it's the question that we all have as we try to work together, whether or not it's trying to bring, getting Roslyn and, kind of the TRP. Whether or not it's, how do we work together, collaboratively, I know that you guys will all be going to the AKBLG soon, and so you're gonna wanna, say, hey, we're working together more, and it's, we're seeing success, right, and so I think that's where, if we get a really big, something going on there, we know that, who comes in and usually is gonna shop at the Canadian Tire, there's a one at
Yeah,
Fruitvale or
absolutely.
whatever,
Yeah,
right? So there's
yeah.
always those sorts of things of driving, our regional area comes and does a lot of shopping in this area, not that they don't wanna shop in the other small communities, just don't have some of the selection I know in the bigger stores.
Let's make some motions.
So the only question for me is, I did bump up that grant to 8, I don't know if you wanna use some of that or not, or if it's just figure it out, Colin, the 40 isn't insurmountable, but 30 is also very, very important, so whatever.
I feel like it's just a different way of helping out our community, right? Like when, by us investing in economic development, it's gonna help other businesses support these types of things as well, so.
It's all connected.
It's all connected.
Yeah.
Big vote.
That being said, like as approval of ready grants, I mean, it's. All of us had different opinions of how much each group should be given,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's something to take into account, some of them, I mean, we have. $43,000 that we've never budgeted for before, right? That we've got to come up from somewhere. But does it have to be 43? Can it be 37? Can it be 30, right? I mean, that just means you have to be more fiscally responsible and tighten your budget, like every other business does right now is having to tighten our budget. Even ourselves are having to tighten our budgets on things, so, I think we have to also look at that as we're making decisions too.
Yeah, good point too. Councilor Hanson.
Okay, so I guess we have to make a decision here. Are we okay with the community futures request of $17,268?
I would make that a motion.
Can I please recuse myself for this?
Oh,
I don't, here's a weird, yeah.
There's no pecuniary.
There is no.
Yeah. I don't think you're gonna reap any benefits from any of
Thanks for the opportunity to say that word again.
Okay, so everybody is in favor of that 17,268 to community futures. LCIC,
I think we should make
Motion.
motions as we go through this.
Okay.
They should be separate,
just separate each of them
all
separately.
3 separate.
Okay.
And with the understanding, as GM Butler stated, with kind of the caveat of the motion being.
So
even if you want to start.
would
with the first one.
you like me to, okay, so.
Do,
For the
Mike.
first motion, I would suggest that council direct staff to enter into a 2024 one-year funding agreement with Community Futures by providing financial support in the amount of $17,268.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second that.
all those in favor? Carried unanimously.
And then a second suggestion is that council direct staff to enter into a 2024 one-year funding agreement with, should it be LCDTS now?
I think it should be LCIC. Yeah, 'cause
LCIC.
that is who we are. That is who we are dealing with.
Okay, a one-year funding agreement with LCIC by providing financial support in the amount of $100,663.
I'll move that.
I'll second that.
Councillor Benson, Councillor Wilson, all those in favor? Councillor Hanson, did you have your hand up?
I was actually going to speak to it,
okay.
before we voted, sorry. I would be, as much as we've seen all of these significant increases, I would be prepared to, you know, as we're trying to be cost effective as everybody else is right now, prepared to move forward with a $95,000 approval, as opposed to a 100,663 as opposed to the full amount.
Would you like to put that amendment on the floor?
I would like to put that amendment on the floor.
Is there
Amendment to the original.
a seconder for that motion, for that amendment?
I'll second that.
Any discussion before we go for the vote on that? Oh,
Why? $5,000 and,
I'm
just
as-
kind of
as-
confused
as-
to why you would make that motion.
I would like to see, as I briefly spoke about in the beginning, is an opportunity to be able to have, take some funding for some of that funding, to be able to use some of that information and provide it to our staff, to be able to do economic development on our website, provide better information to put out there to people, and as opposed to dumping all of the economic development funding out to them, and then not having an opportunity to use that information and those funds to boost up the information that we can provide. Because even if they have the information, then that's not necessarily us that's getting that out to the public and getting that out to people looking here. So that has to come from somewhere for someone's staff hours and wages to be able to do those upgrades, to be able to add economic development activities and a resource area for our staff.
Councillor Benson, go ahead.
Totally agree. And maybe that could be one of the synergies, because remember they talked about Imagine Kootenays, thought
Yeah,
the part
I
of
think
it.
it's on their website, LCS.
Like if we could like link to that on our
Mhm.
website, yes, it goes somewhere else, but it's,
At least it's one stop, because
Mhm.
right now we have
Yeah.
information and it's gone.
yeah,
Like someone goes to our website, they're sent to there and we never knew that they even tried to do something
Yeah.
here. So there's no follow-up for us.
gotcha, yeah.
And if they have a tracking on our website for people that come here for information, for business, for land inventory,
Yeah.
for data, for, you know, community profile, what kind of businesses are here, it would be nice to have that
You'd have
information
that.
available for our community, for people looking at our website, as opposed to just going somewhere else and us not having information to track.
So could we add that as part of the,
Agreement.
that we have, because then if we had like an economic development page that people could like go to from there, we could get track, or at least numbers of data, and then
People
Right.
looking,
people looking, and then even if they go to Imagine Kootenays or they go to Metal Tech Alley or the land inventory, have it all linked there, we still have the number of people visiting that page. Could we put that as part of our agreement to?
provide us with that information.
Yeah,
Done. Sorry,
That's
Councillor Becker.
outside of this motion.
Oh, okay.
Just a point of clarity, it should be the LCCDTS as they dissolved the wholly owned subsidiary of the LCIC. February 15th meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Becker.
No worries.
So the motion was for 95,000. And all those in favor of dropping it, or of moving it to 95,000? Councillor Hanson, all those opposed? Carried. So the motion is for 100,663 for the LCIC. And it has been moved. And it has been seconded, so all those in favor? Carried. Thank you, everyone. And so, staff will,
To the amended.
for the original motion.
so we're okay.
Yeah.
And then through the chair, the final one, I do believe. The council directs staff to enter into a 2024 one-year funding agreement with the Chamber of Commerce by providing financial support in the amount of $34,130.
I'll make that motion.
Counselor Wilson, Counselor Hanson, all those in favor? Carried unanimously. And so, staff will not put any pressure on you, but, come up with the language for the rest of the, motion. You know, for, getting together as a group.
Staff will write something in the funding agreement.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then get back to us. Will we be doing that by email or as quick Zoom meeting or?
No, you've given staff the permission to do
Okay,
it, but
yeah.
we will make sure that you see a copy of it.
We see the
Yeah.
wording. Okay,
Perfect.
okay. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
If that's everything, then I guess I'll, need a motion for adjournment. Counselor Martin and Counselor Butler, all those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank